This organization, you know what it's called?
Its name is Spectre.
What if Spectre wasn't imagination? What if it was real? Let me tell you about a man named Ian Fleming. Most people know him as the writer who invented James Bond. Fleming spent the Second World War as a commander. He ran agents, planned operations, moved information across continents. He was not a civilian imagining spy work. He was an insider. When he wrote the James Bond novel Spectre, the special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion, he described it as operating under the guise of the International Brotherhood of Resistance Against Oppression, a charitable front. And inside it, a second loyalty. Spectre had assets placed at the top banks, in governments, and military commands. Fleming's Spectre didn't attack governments from the outside. It placed people inside the governments as parasites who controlled their host. Now it's key to know how the intelligence networks actually operate. And while Bond films are far more playful with reality, what Fleming described in his novel Spectre is not fiction, it's doctrine. The Dutch Parliament is in session. It's the formal debate following the King's speech, the most watched political moment of the year in the Netherlands. Thierry Baudet is standing to deliver his address. He's the leader of the Forum for Democracy, a sitting member of the House of Representatives. He holds a doctorate in philosophy from Leiden University. He won more Senate seats than any other party in 2019. He is not a man who wanders off script. He begins reading a list of names. He describes a pattern of foreign institutional influence running through the Dutch government. He describes a parasitic network that he has been tracking for years. Then he gets to the finance minister, Sigrid Kaag. He notes that she has a profile on a particular international network's website, that she appears in their documentation numerous times. The speaker cuts his microphone. The entire cabinet stands and walks out. The speaker invokes the authority of the party of the minister Baudet is currently naming. This is done to prevent him from finishing the sentence. This video exists. You can watch it. Baudet publishes the full text of his speech online because he was physically prevented from delivering it in Parliament. In it, he says what he wanted to tell them is that the network runs deeper than Kaag, that it runs through the whole room, that it has a name. A private organisation, not a government, not a military. It recruits promising people under 40 from every country in the world. Politicians, journalists, business executives and scientists. They are selected for their demonstrated ability in their field and potential for future influence. They go through a 5-year program. They meet regularly with the organisers' senior figures. They form a network with each other that will last for the rest of their careers. After 5 years, they exit and go back to their professions. Some become ministers, some become prime ministers, some become central bank governors and health secretaries or finance ministers. The organisation doesn't write their policies for them. It doesn't have to. The curriculum is already programmed inside them. And then, one Tuesday morning in September 2017, the man who built this program sits in front of an audience at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, a public event recorded on camera, and tells them exactly what he had done.
I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on.
And then came his most audacious comment.
That we penetrate the cabinets.
His name was Klaus Schwab, and the man asking the questions was David Gergen, who had advised 4 US sitting presidents. Nobody in that room looked surprised. In the tradecraft of intelligence operations, penetration is a precise term. It does not mean influence. It does not mean proximity. It means placing an asset inside a target structure in a position where they can shape decisions from within. Klaus Schwab was born in Ravensburg, Germany in 1938. He trained as an economist and an engineer. did his MBA at Harvard, and in 1971, at the age of 32, founded the World Economic Forum in Geneva. His initial idea was simple: bring European business executives together with American management practices. By 1992, something had changed in his thinking. That year, he launched a program called the Global Leaders for Tomorrow. In 2004, the name changed to the Forum for Young Global Leaders. The mission itself did not change, only the targets. They became younger, less established, easier to program. The candidates are always young politicians, journalists, tech executives, scientists, health officials. It is highly selective, roughly 100 people every year, drawn from every major country on Earth. And the most bizarre part is that the family of the participants are also background checked and scored. By Schwab's own admission, his program had produced more than 2,500 graduates in senior positions of influence around the world. He described the program as not a networking opportunity. He talked about it as penetration. That word matters. A networking club connects people. Penetration places people inside a structure with a specific purpose. This word was used publicly in a Harvard lecture by the man who designed the program. And this is the language of espionage, documented by agents turned writers, Fleming, Lacar, and Cochrane. Now the list. This is the part where some viewers may want to stop me and say, look, membership of a club doesn't mean anything. People join things, they move on, they make their own decisions. And that's a fair comment. But hold that thought. Here is what that membership record shows. Emmanuel Macron, President of France, Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. These are all confirmed by Schwab himself in the Harvard speech. On top of this, you have people like Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Sanna Marin, Prime Minister of Finland, Alexander De Croo, Prime Minister of Belgium, Annalena Baerbock, German Foreign Minister, Anderson Cooper, CNN, George Stephanopoulos, ABC News, Lachlan Murdoch, CEO of Fox Corporation, Thomas Friedman of the New York Times, multiple senior BBC executives going back to 1999. Then on top of that, you've got Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Mark Zuckerberg, Aaron Schmidt, all names publicly available on the YGL website. It is not hidden. This is worth repeating. It is not hidden. So here is what Schwab said in full that Tuesday at Harvard. He begins by talking about the organization's history of identifying leaders early. He mentions Merkel, Putin, a casual name drop, as though placing world leaders in his alumni directory is something you say in passing. Then he shifts to the present tense. What we are very proud of now is the young generation. Prime Minister Trudeau, the President of Argentina, and so on. We penetrate the cabinets. David Gergen, seated across from him, nods. And that's true in Argentina as well, Schwab confirms. And it's true in France now with the president. Then Gergen asks about the number of Trudeau's cabinet. Schwab said, half of his cabinet, maybe even more. He said this with the tone of a man describing his garden. Quite pleased, specific, unconcerned. The footage was archived at Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics website. It's publicly available. A normal academic event. There were people in the room. No major publication investigated it. No parliamentary inquiry was launched. No commission was convened. The man who ran the program that had placed people across cabinets of the world's democracies described exactly what he had done on camera. In a room full of people. There is a pattern that runs across every Western democracy over the last 30 years. And once you see it, the elections start looking a little different. The pattern is this. Parties change. Governments change. The party that campaigned on opposing the last government program takes office, and then implements the same program as the party it just replaced. The policies the voters were promised would change, don't. The policies nobody voted for on either side stay exactly where they are. Central bank independence, well, No one voted for it. Nobody campaigned on reversing it, and it remains. The broad architecture of trade policy stays. The direction of travel on digital identity infrastructure stays. The parameter of pandemic response, as we will see, are identical across governments, be they left, right, or centre. In the years after the WEF's program had been running long enough to place graduates in senior positions, colleagues in my field began observing something that didn't fit our operational picture. Governments were implementing policies that ran contrary to national interest frameworks that we were working within. It wasn't one country, it wasn't one party. It was a directional consistency that crossed borders. It crossed political spectrums simultaneously. We had a name for what that pattern looked like. We just never expected to find it operating at this scale, and operating in plain sight. It's March 2020, and in the space of 4 weeks, 190 governments across the planet implemented an almost identical response to COVID-19. Lockdowns, school closures, business closures, mask mandates, a sequencing of measures that moved from advisory to mandatory, in approximately the same order, in approximately the same time frame, across democracies, autocracies, wealthy nations, poor nations, countries with functioning public health systems, and countries without them. An academic paper published later described the international policy coverage of March 2020 as surprisingly rapid, decisive, and homogeneous. On March 1st, around 8% of countries had implemented stringent measures. By the end of March, more than 90%. Now, I want to be precise here. A new virus spreading globally will produce coordinated international response. The WHO exists for this purpose. There are structural reasons why governments, looking at the same pandemic modelling, came to a similar conclusion. What is harder to explain with those reasons alone is the language. Build Back Better, used in that exact phrase. It was used by Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau, Joe Biden, Jacinda Ardern, Mark Rutte, and Nicola Sturgeon, all within the same stretch of weeks.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. Building back better.
My plan to build back better.
Build back better.
It's a big effort to really have a great reset.
Governments don't normally synchronise those slogans. Parties don't normally share those talking points with their ideological opponents across national borders. A left-wing government in New Zealand doesn't tend to use the exact same vocabulary as a conservative government in the United Kingdom, unless the vocabulary isn't coming from the parties. Governments don't run on ideology, they run on instructions. The ideology is the packaging. What's inside the box doesn't change when you change the label. Here is the thing about Spectre that Fleming got right, and the parts the films always miss. In the novel, Spectre doesn't want to blow up the world. It wants to own it, quietly, through leverage, through assets placed in positions of trust. Someone drawing two salaries, one visible, one not. Through legal instrumentation, signed properly, witnessed properly, filed in the right offices. The criminality in Fleming's Spectre is not in the deeds. The deeds are perfectly legal. The criminality is the second loyalty, the fact that the assets serve two masters, and the visible master is always the one who loses. Now, the WEF Young Global Leaders program is entirely legal. He described it at Harvard, on camera, to a man who had advised 4 presidents. He wrote books about it. The books are in libraries. The questions that data forces you to ask is not whether any of this is illegal. It is a different question. If elections produce governments that implement substantially the same structural decisions, regardless of what voters choose, and if a private organisation has spent 30 years identifying, programming, and placing people into positions that make decisions, what word do you use for that organisation? And what word do you use for what that organisation is doing? Fleming had a word for it. He called it penetration. Spectre failed because Bond kept stopping them. The YGL succeeded because nobody thought to try. Back to the Dutch Parliament. September 22nd, 2022. Thierry Baudet is mid-sentence with his microphone just being cut off. And here is what you need to know about Baudet before the walkout. He founded the Forum for Democracy in 2016 as a think tank, opposing the EU's association agreement with Ukraine. He won that referendum. The following year, he ran for parliament. He won 2 seats. In 2019, his party topped the provincial Senate polls, giving him more leverage in the upper chambers than any other party in the country. The man plays piano at concert level. He's published 12 books, including one specifically on the COVID response and the Great Reset. He is not a man who stumbled into this subject. He has been studying it for years. So when Baudet stood up in the Dutch Parliament and began naming the network, he was not improvising. He had documentation. This was all prepared. He had a prepared speech. He had been in Parliament long enough to know the rules. What he did not anticipate, or maybe he did, was the reaction. The cabinet stood as one body and walked out. The speaker cited parliamentary decorum. Baudet published the full text of the speech online that same day, along with a statement that he had been physically prevented from completing. For years, I have seen the destruction of our society, and I have been fighting against it. The man who tried to name the network on the floor of his own parliament was silenced by the institutional representatives of the network he was naming. The video exists. That part is not in dispute. Here is the version of the story that keeps me up at night. The YGL program has documents. It has a website. It has an annual report. But here is what's never made public. The curriculum. The 5-year program. What participants are actually taught. What the conversations in those rooms actually cover. What a young global leader agrees to when they accept the invitation. We have the YGL's charter. It says it's for leadership development. What it actually authorises. What the graduates have agreed to. What happens when the network needs a favour from a graduate who is now a finance minister. That document has never been permitted to surface. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe the whole thing runs on culture and curriculum, a shared framework, a system with no formal mechanism at all. Maybe that's exactly how it was designed, because no paperwork means no trail. So here is the thought experiment I want to leave you with. You don't take over a country with tanks anymore. Tanks are visible. Tanks create resistance. Tanks end up in the history books under the word invasion. And people know what happened, who did it. And that ends up before The Hague as a war crime. You do it like this instead. You find the people who are going to run things. Before they run things, you find them young and impressionable. Before they know enough to be suspicious about an invitation, you bring them into a room with other people exactly like them, from every country, every party, every system. You give them a shared language, a shared set of assumptions about how the world works and who should run it. You make them feel for the very first time in their lives like they're exactly where they belong. Then once the programming is complete, you send them home to be planted in positions of power and act under your instruction. In 50 years of counterintelligence case files, one finding appears consistently. The most effective assets were the ones who were never coerced. They were the ones who genuinely believe. A true believer doesn't exhibit asset behaviour. They don't look over their shoulders. They don't hesitate at the wrong moment. They don't need a handler. Because the handler's work was done years earlier, in a room that looks nothing like recruitment. Elections happen, parties change. The anger of the population moves from the left to the right and back again. And new faces appear on television making new promises. And for a moment it feels like something is about to change. It never does. Not the things that matter anyway. Not the relationship with the institutions that nobody voted for. Not the decisions made in rooms the public doesn't know existed. not the direction of travel. It continues regardless of which party won last Tuesday. Fleming called it a second loyalty. The first loyalty is visible to the public. It's the flag, the party, the voters, the oath of office. The second loyalty is the one that existed first. It is the one that can't be seen. What if Fleming wasn't imagining Spectre? What if he was warning us? So this file came to me in pieces. A lecture from Harvard, a walkout in The Hague, a study from Princeton, a list on a website that keeps changing. I won't tell you what to conclude from it. That's not what I do here. What I can tell you is this. The man who built the program admitted what the program does on camera at one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. The program has produced heads of governments across multiple continents. A sitting parliamentarian tried to name the network on the floor of his own parliament and was blocked from doing so. All of this is documented. All of it is verifiable. You can check every piece of it yourself. The question isn't whether these things happened. They did. The question is whether the most parsimonious explanation, the one that requires the fewest additional assumptions, the one that had intelligence agents concerned, is merely coincidence or curriculum. When the same word appears in a speech by a right-leaning Prime Minister in London, and a left-leaning Prime Minister in New Zealand, and a Liberal Prime Minister in Canada, all within the same fortnight, and all of those leaders have one single thread in common, they all were graduates of the WWII YGL program in positions that Klaus Schwab described as penetrations himself. Thanks for joining me here today, and remember, they rely on you forgetting, on you clicking away. Don't do it. Go deeper down the rabbit hole with this next video. And to make sure the signal can find you again, join the network, click subscribe here, and don't forget to turn on notifications. This is Thinkavarium.